Here we go. Good morning. This is walk and talk number 2, and yeah, it's quite a kind of interesting situation. You've got so many possible things to speak about of interest to me, and yeah, I find it difficult to kind of say which one to go for first, but I'll keep it fairly general for now. So, enjoying these walks, kept these up for the past week, and yeah, keep up 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. Very easy to go over. So generally seem to be averaging around about 8,500 to 9,000, which is fine. Feeling better, losing weight, and generally feeling fitter, and just enjoying being in the lovely Thetford Forest here, which is rather nice. Yeah, today I thought I'd speak about a feeling that's been coming upon me increasingly, maybe over a period of about 2 years, but more and more so of recent weeks. A feeling that's been growing within me of being somewhat out of kilter with the times that I live in. Maybe I'm a relic, 69 years old now, so maybe I am something of a relic of previous times, carrying with me previous attitudes and ideas. But I cannot help but feel that the world I live in has gone completely mad. A lot of the values espoused and things that are held to be true or to be admirable and so forth are not in the slightest to me, and if anything, it's on the contrary. I find myself, what's the word really? How do you describe it? You're aware of the absurdity of certain positions that people hold, how strangely illogical and not reflecting reality whatsoever, and yet they're seriously discussed as if they were self-evident truths, and anyone who begs to differ in the world we live in today is cancelled or sidelined in some way, and called all sorts of names that normally end in phobe or ist, and that these phobes and ists are invented almost on a daily basis. It was a strange experience just over Christmas when I took my son and wife up to Norwich, an interesting town, interesting city I should say, about 25 miles hence. We went to the library, which is a very good library actually, well resourced, pleasant atmosphere in an interesting building. And my wife wanted to do some studying, so I left her on the second floor, happily ensconced in her laptop, and I took my son down to the children's library and went through the books in the hope of finding something entertaining, interesting for him to read. At his age, he's very much into anything that involves a lot of action. It needs a truck minimum. Hopefully the truck will be a monster truck. He likes wars and things and conflicts between people. He likes the spectacular, the noisy, the loud, bordering on the violent. I remember as a child I was not that different, but I turned into being quite a pacific sort of adult, and I wasn't really pro-war at all for any part of my life. Barely any war as far as I can remember. Was I on the side of the aggressors on either side who wanted the wars to stop? So the attitude doesn't really carry through into adulthood, but it's a part of development, especially for boys, I think. So I wanted to find some book that had a reasonable moral kind of position, or it taught a life lesson, or was just simply entertaining. And there were one or two, to be fair, there were one or two. Oh, pirates, of course, he loves pirates. But awful lot of books that seem to be explaining to me one of 4 subjects, or 5 subjects. LGBT issues, lots and lots of those, about children having 2 mummies and 2 daddies, and accepting people doing this and that, and all sorts of things along those lines. Transgender issues, a bizarre belief system, has no validity whatsoever, complete nonsense, but tons of books in children's libraries these days to attest to this strange belief system, strange superstition. What else was there? Oh, stuff about racism, but kind of almost promoting it as some sort of modern kind of attitude seems to have it. What we understood for ages as not being racist, i.e. trying to treat people, was it Martin Luther King said, on the content of their character, not the colour of their skin. And we seem to have gone the other way now, where it seems to be you must treat people on the colour of their skin and not at all on the content of their character. Books promoting that kind of attitude. Global warming, that's a favourite. Put over as if there was no doubt whatsoever. There's only one possible view, and it's an absolute disaster, and hence terrifying children into believing that their world is coming to an end pretty soon. There may well be some degree of global warming. I'm no scientist, I don't know. But even the fact I've got to say I'm no scientist, it's become as if you cannot have an opinion unless you've got a string of qualifications behind your name. When you live in this country, for instance, and life goes on much the same. You have a hot summer and you're glad of it, and apparently it's the hottest since records began. Records only began 150 odd years ago, but we're supposed to be terrified, all to save a planet from an atmosphere that contains 0.4% CO2, and a planet that lived or survived quite happily when it was at 6%, 15 times more. How's that? The world's getting greener. Apparently the CO2, plants love CO2. They thrive on CO2. Lack of CO2 will kill them. And yet we're supposed to believe that the world's coming to this rather unpleasant end. I do believe it is warming. It does seem to be warming, but on the greater scheme of things, we're talking about pretty small numbers and over quite a long period of time. And the effects, many of the effects are positive, not negative. So terrifying children in such a way seems unnecessary. And so on and so forth. Diversity and equality. That's become a buzzword. Everyone is equal, apparently. If I remember correctly, it's actually in Declaration of Independence. So it's not just recently this idea has come to the fore. But I think the wording is something like, we hold it to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Well, I hold it as self-evident that all men are not created equal. In fact, I've yet to find 2 equal people. After 69 years of searching on this planet, I haven't found 2 people who are exactly equal. They'll be better and worse in all sorts of ways. They'll be talented or untalented in all sorts of ways. They'll be bigger, smaller, stronger, weaker, faster, slower, brighter, dimmer. They will be all sorts of things, but what they won't be is equal. Now, the argument to say that all people should be treated equally, given the same equal chance before the law, I'm all for. Absolutely. But the myth that all people are equal, actually we are all worth the same in the way that we can contribute, is, I'm afraid, simply not true. And to pretend otherwise is just absurd. But many of these things are absurd. If we circle back to perhaps the most absurd of all, the transgender one, basically you've got XX or XY chromosomes in your body. If you're female, you've got XX. If you're male, you're XY, and it goes through more or less every cell of your body. The one exception, ironically enough, is sperm cells in men. They can be XX or XY, hence determining the sex of the embryo. So, yeah, there is that one exception, but you can't actually change from XX to XY or XY to XX. It's just simply not possible. Now, it's a fair point to say that there are exceptions. There are one or two what's known as transsexuals, double XY, double YX, that sort of thing. But it's a tiny percentage. So, and there's also the thing about producing small or large gametes. You either produce sperm or eggs, and you cannot change that. It's simply a biological fact. This is simple, very simple, like first year biology stuff. And yet this argument goes on and on. I tend not to engage myself in it now because it's absurd. It's nonsense. So there's no point in writing about it. If you want to believe in that, or want to believe in the Tooth Fairy or Father Christmas or whatever else you want to believe in, up to you. But it's how can I put it? It's what's the word? Wrong. Okay. Anyway, this is a bit of a rant now, isn't it? Let's move on from all this and just go on to that feeling that I referred to of being kind of hopelessly out of my time. I kind of hope that times will change and that these various madnesses that the world seems to have been caught up with will resolve themselves in some way that leads to a sensible way forward. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm afraid those who control the narrative. Well, it's another story, perhaps another video, but essentially there are reasons that these narratives are promoted, and the reasons usually are very much meta. They're beyond the narratives themselves. It's kind of it's the usual thing with humanity since time began. It's mostly about power and control, I'm afraid. It's almost like the more absurd you can make the idea, the more useful it is to see if people will go along with it, see if you can control people to believe something that is blatantly false, or at least dubious. Anyway, enough for this week's little rant. Let me go more into each of these issues, so discuss them properly at some future date, but I think that for today will do very nicely. Usual thing, hit subscribe, comment below, feel free to contribute, and yeah, have a nice week and hopefully see you next week. TTFN.